Okay, so here's our agenda for today, and just worthwhile just having a quick look through that. Now, just to let you know, I'll be starting by giving you a quick introduction regarding the purpose of Mobility Tool Plus. But the main focus of the session will be an actual live run-through of the Mobility Tool platform and the relevant tabs that you will be seeing and using. Now, we'll first talk you through what you need to do beforehand as you log in, and then we'll go through each relevant tab together, showing you how to use and update information on the platform. We will then round up with the key points that all beneficiaries should be aware of. And finally, we will mention the next steps and how to contact us for support throughout your project duration. So before I go on to the actual platform, I'm just going to give you a brief refresher on what Mobility Tool Plus is and its purpose. Now, this platform is an online management and reporting system for all projects under the European Commission's Erasmus Plus programme. It's been developed by the European Commission, and it's a contractual requirement for Key Action 2 projects to use the tool in order to report their project activities to the UK National Agency. Okay, so I'm actually now going to change, and we're going to go to Mobility Tool Plus, or at least we're going to log in, and I think the first thing I'm going to bring to your attention, just I think hopefully you'll be able to see that fairly soon. Excellent. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to bring to your attention actually is today's demonstration uses a version of Mobility Tool, which is a test environment, and the project that we will be looking at is a test project. It is not a real project. And it's actually a version of it's a particular Key Action 2 project which may slightly differ to some of the projects that you may have. And so you may find small differences when you actually get to access your own project in due course, and that would largely be due to the nature of the key action that you're working with, either it's a youth or a vet or an adult ed project. Now, access to Mobility Tool Plus is actually through ECAS. ECAS is the main portal, I guess, is the best way of describing it, to a lot of commission databases, and I always reflect on it. It's like a door. It's an entry point. Now, it is actually quite important that when you have access to Mobility Tool Plus, you'll be expected to register on ECAS if you aren't already registered. Now, the important thing is actually to make sure that the email address that you use for your ECAS account is the same email address that you will have used or given to us for your project, and is the email address that we hold for you. If those email addresses differ, for whatever reason, unfortunately the link won't actually work. So it is quite a small but very important point. But when you get your link through to Mobility Tool Plus, and I say people should be getting that on Thursday or Friday of this week, you'll click through and you'll arrive here at the ECAS landing page, and it's at this particular point that you will then put in your username and your password, and you will log in into ECAS, and you will then be directed through to the Mobility Tool Plus. Now, I've already, in good old-fashioned style, I've already loaded up a username and a password on this particular screen to make it easier for the demonstration purposes, and I'm hoping that if I just click on the login now, we'll be redirected to Mobility Tool Plus. And yes, we have, so that's a bit of a relief. Now, you'll see here that this is the page, really, the starting point, I guess, or the home page, where you will have details of the projects that you can edit or access within Mobility Tool Plus. Here you'll see on the left-hand side of your screen there's a grant number, and that would be the grant number that you have for your project. But if you have more than one project which you can access within Mobility Tool Plus, and you might have, say, a Key Action 3 project or a Key Action 1 project, they'll be listed here on the left-hand side. And if you've ever used or had projects of old, you may also find that you might have one of the lifelong learning program projects on the left-hand side here at the bottom of the screen as well. Now, another point just to bring to your attention is that you will already have received a guide, the National Agency Guide actually, on Mobility Tool Plus, which hopefully you've been able to have a quick look at. But the European Commission actually produced their own guide as well, and you can find that on the right-hand side of your screen, and you'll see here documentation, and underneath there's a link to the European Commission's guide on Mobility Tool Plus. Okay, so just looking back on the left-hand side of your screen, as I mentioned to you, you can see the projects that are listed that you can access. And also, interestingly enough, you'll also see here the user's role in the project as well. And Test Menzi is listed as somebody who is a beneficiary and is able to edit, access or edit the details of the project. Okay, so I'm going to click on the grant agreement number, and that will then take me through into the details for this particular example project. Okay, and there we are. So now we're actually into the project details itself. And this is the first screen that you'll see, and it's the project details tab. You'll probably see it along the ribbon here at the top. The details is grayed out, and that's really just to indicate that that's the screen that we're actually looking at the moment. Now, the information here is information that unfortunately you're unable to amend. It's really designed to give you an overview of your project and basic information about your project, and is automatically filled in and will appear in a similar form when you log on for the first time and thereafterwards. Now you'll see actually there's various boxes in this particular screen, and we'll just have a quick look at each. Now you'll see here on the context information box to the left of your screen, basic details. Again, it will explain which key action you're involved in and the action type. And I mentioned earlier to you actually that this is a specific key action type. It happens to be a strategic partnerships for school education, and hence why I mentioned that you may find that some of the drop-down lists might be slightly different when you actually get onto Mobility Tool Plus yourself. But just to reassure you that the workings of it is consistent, and the icons they are the same as are the various sections that are available to populate, and we'll go through all of those in due course. But again, we've got some basic information about the start of the project and the end of the project and the duration. Now, in the middle here, we have the project information box, and again, we've got the grant number and project title and some just basic information there too. Now, to the right of your screen, we have the project access box. And in fact, this is replicating information which was on the first screen. I don't know whether or not you remember, but Menzi was showing up as being a beneficiary and able to edit access to the project as well. Not all people who have access to your project may have that access or those particular rights, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a short while as we look at the contacts screen. And just down here on the bottom right hand of the screen, you've got the history information, and now that box actually displays information regarding when your project was created in Mobility Tool Plus and when it was last updated. And in the middle, just a final box really, I guess, is the beneficiary organisation information box, and that's details of the beneficiary, the PIC number, the legal name of the organisation. Okay, so that's your starting point. Now I'm going to click next onto organisations. Okay, so you'll see that hopefully that screen is now loaded up for you to see. Now by clicking on organisations, you actually now, as you'll see, you're on the project and beneficiary organisation screen. Okay, I'm going to explain a little bit about some of the features that you'll see here, which are constant throughout. For example, you'll see this search function, and if you wanted to find a particular beneficiary, if we were to start to type, there we are, you'll see it's actually narrowed the search down and has removed the other organisations, and it's just showing the one there now. So you may find that helpful, particularly if you've got a long list, and that's a feature which you'll find on other screens as well. Now you'll also see that on the left-hand side of your screen, if I just hover around, now this button here, which looks a little bit like a calculator, is an add or remove columns button. Now you'll actually see in your screen that there's various bits of information already shown in a summary kind of format. We've got there the legal name of organisations, whether or not they're non-profit, a public body, or whatever. Now if we were to click that, you'll see here that we can actually add in extra columns. For example, there we are, we've put in a business name, got an email address as well, or we can take off those columns so that the screen isn't as busy as it potentially could be if we were to add in all that information. Okay, now the other thing I'm just going to highlight is this little radio button here, this little circle. Now this is quite useful because if you click on that, you'll be able to see up here, a little one came up to highlight that you've clicked on one of those records. In fact, if we click on two, you'll see we click on two records. You can export the information for that particular line, which is now slightly darker colour, in a PDF format, an Excel file format, or a CSV file format. And this functionality you'll see consistent throughout Ability Tool Plus as well. But if we just try and click on here, hopefully there we are. Hopefully if you see that now, I've just downloaded the file, and I think it should just be coming up, and you'll just see there that it's opened up a file containing the information for that particular project, so we could have added in more lines as well. Okay, I'm just going to close that down. Back to. Okay, so we're back there again. Now the other feature I'd just like to show you is this on the right hand side. I'm hovering around this particular icon here, and this is the icon for viewing. Now you can't actually edit the information here. I'd suggest actually the first time that you go into Ability Tool Plus, have a good look around just to make sure that the information is correct, and if it isn't correct or if you're finding any errors, can you please let the National Agency know. Now if we just click on the view, another window will open up. Hopefully you can see that, and that's giving us more information about this particular organisation, full address details, that kind of thing. Okay, so if we just close that down. Right, so I'm going to move to the next tab, which is our Contacts tab. Hopefully you will see that there in front of you now on your screen. And probably already some of this is becoming familiar to you. We've got this ability to add and remove columns. We've got here the export functionality if we were to select an item. In fact, just on that particular point, you'll see actually if we were to select an item, not only can we export it, but it's also given us the option if we wanted to delete a record. Okay. Now, on the right-hand side, again, we've got the view. We've also got an edit function here, edit button, and on some, we've got a delete button as well. And you'll see in the top here the feature of create. Okay, if we wanted to add in a new contact. Now you'll find actually when you go in to start off with that the contacts probably will be your legal representative and your primary contact will be already listed, and equally for your partner organisations. But you can actually add in additional contacts as well. So you may have somebody within your organisation is responsible for doing the administration, and you may wish to give that person access to Mobility Tool Plus in order for them to type in details, and that's why you would have a create button here. I'm going to mention actually quite important that I'd ask that if you are making changes to the legal person or the main contact for the organisation, please make sure that you discuss that first with the national agency, just so that we're aware of those, that it might need a change, particularly as that's likely to lead to a change to the grant agreement, and otherwise these things can get missed. Okay, so let's have a look at editing a contact. So I'm going to click on that edit button. Okay, and you'll see here that we have some information about the person, name, whatever. Say that their email address has changed and they're no longer .com but they're .co.uk. Okay, we can make the change there, and we can save that change as well. Okay, go back in to view. Hopefully there we'll see, so we've made that change. And also you might find it quite interesting at this particular point to notice these little buttons here, which are all about access. Now, for the beneficiary organisation, you can actually, you have three choices for an individual. You can have an individual edit, which is what our example here, Menzi, as we are pretending to be today, can do. So they can actually go in and change details in the project, add in information within Mobility Tool Plus. You've got view access to project or no access to project. Now, a partner organisation will only have the options of view access to project or no access to project. They have no ability or no functionality to actually edit a project, so everything that's entered into Mobility Tool Plus will be done so by the beneficiary themselves, and the beneficiary would decide effectively who can view and who can't view the project details by clicking on the appropriate button there. Okay, so we'll just come to that. Now, if we were to delete an entry, so we want to delete there, we'll see here another screen comes up and asks us the question that, do we actually want to delete the selected item? Now, if you do press delete, just to be aware that it is a permanent deletion. So just to be very mindful of at any point actually throughout Mobility Tool Plus, when you press on the delete, making sure that that is actually what you want to do. I'll cancel that just for the purpose of this demonstration. Now, I mentioned earlier about adding in a new contact. We'll press that button there, and again we'll get the familiar screen up. If we will just put in some random data. And you'll see here actually with the email address, it's looking towards a format that it understands or feels is a valid format. And if we want to, we can actually click over the information or the address details to be the same as the organisation by clicking that button. We'll just show you actually, I don't know whether you can see here that Melchester is technical, is a beneficiary, and therefore we've got 3 choices of access to project. But if we do the partner, you'll see here only 2 choices as well. But we can click on to copy over effectively the address details, and we can just save that as well. And you'll hopefully see there we are, our new project contact. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to project management and implementation. Now this is where the information will be held in terms of the grant allowed for project management and implementation. And you might actually find when you go in that some of this is already pre-populated. And you'll see actually down the bottom of the screen, this is the maximum amount which has been approved within the grant for this particular project. It's showing at €27,000. But we can actually edit the amounts. We just select one of those participating organisations, and you'll see here by just clicking on the little icon for edit, we can actually enter in a different amount if we were to do so, if there was a reason for us to do that. And we can save. Okay, and you'll see here there's now a discrepancy between the total amount and the total approved amount. And at the bottom, we've got this box actually, which is asking us to explain any discrepancy, and we would be putting in information there for the national agency to explain why those figures are different from what was approved at the grant stage. We'll pop that figure back how it was. You'll see again how easy it is to use Mobility Tool Plus and to change the information. And again, we're going back to our familiar screens of the search and export facility, and our buttons here where we can select a button and if needs be make changes appropriate for those, and equally to adding columns. Okay, so we'll move on now to the next screen, which is Transnational Project Meetings. Okay, so hopefully now you've got another view on your screen. So this is where you would go to view, edit, or add a transnational project meeting. Now you'll see hopefully that the initial screen that you'll view has pretty self-explanatory headings which show the details, the kind of summary details of the transnational project meetings that have taken place and have been input by the coordinator, the lead beneficiary. Now again, you'll see here very familiar and you'll see that we can edit individual meetings. If we just click into a meeting, we can actually have a look at the information for that particular meeting. And an interesting feature is this little timeline, actually. And you'll see that the date of the meeting is put in context, I guess, really, to the length of the overall project. We've got our project start and end dates. As we hover over those dates, hopefully you'll see a little caption coming up, start a project. In fact, it's worthwhile noting that a lot of Mobility Tool Plus, a lot of the different fields have these little pop-ups, little captions, which arrive and tell you what that actually is, what it relates to. You'll see here that the meeting that we're looking at, or was recorded on this particular record, occurs kind of in the middle. It's got a duration of 5 days. We could actually edit that duration if we wanted to. Okay, I'll just add it in. Hopefully. We'll just save that. There we are, and you'll see now we've changed that project duration to 9 days. Now, other things just to notice, we've got details of the receiving organisation and the receiving country and the receiving location. Now, if we scroll down the page, we get a list of the participants who have attended. Now, it's most likely that you'd have probably more than this. You're likely to have more partners to your projects, but we can add in or view actually the participants. If we just look here for now, we'll just have a look at this particular line so we can view that. And again, here we're taken to another screen where it will give us some more information about the participants and the grant specific for those participants from that particular organisation. Go back to our list. There's our list at the bottom of the screen. We can edit. Okay, and we can just say, for example, that actually it wasn't 4, there were 6 participants who went. We'll keep that at Switzerland. But, if we just save that. Update the information there. Now we can add in some participants as well. So we can say use information here just for the sake of demonstration. I've put in the distance band. You'll see actually linked to distance calculator. You can click on that link and it will take you to the Commission's distance calculator so you can find out which band to use. But as you'll have seen, I added in a band and it has already decided what the appropriate grant amount is and has calculated the grant for these 2 participants. And we can just save that data. And there we are. We've got information there added in, so we've got additional participants now for that particular project meeting. So we can go back to our list, and if we're having a new project meeting, we can just hit the create button and just start to add in information. We can just say it's not just at technical or at receiving organisation. Just telling me that the information, well, that's probably because it needs the meeting title. Okay, there we are. See, a good point there actually, and it's highlighted it very well, that if you're not entering in all the information that it needs, it's not going to let you save or move on. So we needed to enter in the meeting title and save that particular meeting. And once we've saved it, there we are. We can now start adding in participants. Okay. But we'll go back to the main list, and I'll just show you the delete button in operation. So I think that's the one that we were looking at, and we can just delete that particular record, and we'll say yes to the permanent deletion of that, and there we are. Okay, so let's move on now to intellectual outputs. Okay, so possibly slightly different format to the screen that, or screens that we've been looking at so far. And a lot more, perhaps a lot more information really on our first landing screen than noticed beforehand. Now, you will find here a general list of the intellectual outputs under this project. Just bear with me just one moment. Right, sorry about that, I just needed a quick drink before moving on. Okay, so we have here, as I said before, the various intellectual outputs, and this overall screen actually gives us a kind of a helicopter view of the number of working days relative to each of the staff categories. And you'll see also gives totals in terms of the rates allowed. So it's given us quite a bit of information really there, but we are able to drill down that level of detail and perhaps find it a little bit easier to absorb as well. And again, very familiar buttons. We've got the three on the right hand side to view, edit or delete. So if we just click on one of our intellectual outputs and review that, obviously not all projects would have intellectual outputs, and so obviously you'd only be entering in information if your project has an approved intellectual output which you've received or receiving grant funding. Now, okay, so here we are looking at the detail, I guess, of that particular intellectual output. First thing to notice is the output identifier. You'll actually have to select, and we'll show you when we create one, select the appropriate output identification. And also here you'll see the type of output and the title of the output as well. And again, that timeline appears, which is quite useful really. It shows you in one glance really where your intellectual output is being worked on relative to the overall project timeline. We've also got details of the available languages, and here's the space where you would put a description of the intellectual output as well. And we'll go down to look at the individual organisations who are involved in that particular intellectual output. We have here an intellectual output. You'll see the Italian Università is the leading organisation for this particular intellectual output. And again, we can perhaps get a little bit clearer view of the number of working days involved for each of these staff categories. You'll see the various staff categories there: managers, teachers, trainers, research, youth workers, technicians. If we scroll to the right, administrative staff, and there we have totals as well. And if we wanted to edit the information for one of those organisations, we just click on the edit button, and you'll see here we go through to another screen, and we can just change the number of days allocated to the different staff categories. We'll just add in a few extra there. As you'll see, I've clicked away and it's already added in the totals. Also, you'll find, and this is a pattern which you'll see on Mobility Tool Plus, there are fields available where you can adjust the amount if it's not calculating it correctly, and you may have special reasons why that should be the case, that you need to enter in a different amount. But you can do so, and that will add in the allow you to override, I guess. Really the key thing there is obviously you need to explain the reasons to the national agency why you've overridden that amount, but we can save there. Okay. And, you'll see here actually, if you look along this particular line, there's the total calculated based on the number of days, but this is the adjusted amount. And if we go back to our list, there we are again, and hopefully you'll see that those adjustments have fed through. Now, if we were to create a new intellectual output here, first thing that we'll need to do is to select an output description, or identifier I should say. And you'll see actually here on the list there are a number of these numbers which are greyed out, and that's because they're already in use. And so we can't duplicate by using the same number. Use that, and we'd be selecting an output type, and we'd be entering in title, and we'd be entering in a start and end date. Okay, again the kind of languages that we might be making the intellectual output available in, and we've given a lengthy description, and then we will just hit save. Okay, and now we can add in organisations. We'll say that Melchester's leading this, and we'll just give some technician days with that, and there we are. And as we hit the save button, it will hopefully add in all that information. There you are onto that screen, which we can again, as we've been doing, edit as well. So we can go back to our list of intellectual outputs, and there we are. That's the one right at the bottom there, which we've just actually added in. Okay, so what we're going to do now is look at the next of the screens, which is Multiplier Events. Okay. Now, hopefully this is all becoming very familiar to all of you. As we are going through, just to remind you that Phoebe and Shante are here to answer any questions that you may have regarding the screens that we've looked at. And if necessary, Shante will tell me to go back to a particular screen if it's going to help the explanation to everybody. I'm happy to do that. But as I said to you before, they are very familiar in their format. They are consistent. I think probably the hardest thing will be just to get used to entering in information and getting a little bit more familiar to some of those buttons that you'll be able to hit and those little icons that you'll be able to hit as well. Okay, so we're on multiplier events now. Now, not all projects will have a multiplier event. Multiplier events will follow on potentially from an intellectual output. And again, you'll see here that we've got this familiar search facility at the top, and we can narrow down the screen if needs be. We can enter in additional columns as well, or remove some of those columns. Just add in those extra bits of information, and we could export all of that information as well quite easily by hitting that export button and hitting on one of those file format choices. Okay, now if we have a look at one of those multiplier events, so we just hit the view there. Okay, and as we've seen before, when you hit view, you often find that a little window pops up. And here we are, so we've got an event identifier, and we've got a description and a title at the top, and also we've got the intellectual outputs which are covered by this particular multiplier event, and we've got a timeline where we can see when the start and end date of the activity is. We've got details of the organizer and the country of the organization as well. And here we'll see an opportunity for us to enter in the number of local participants and the number of international participants, and the amounts are calculated. So if we were to edit one of these, same idea again, we've hit the edit button, and if we were to add in some additional international participants, it's calculated here that there's an additional amount of grant available, and it's added up the total. But again, we are able, if we want to, and of course to do so, to override that amount. We could enter in a figure there. So you'll see I mistyped there, and it told me the figure was going to be too large. But we could do that, and again, it might be something that has been agreed with, and certainly something you would wish to explain as to why you've overrun the figure. And we can just hit the save button, or I'm just going to hit cancel now, and that will take us back to that particular screen. And if we just look at creating a multiplier event, okay, we'll just find an appropriate event identifier, appropriate description. We've got here, clicked into the intellectual outputs covered box, and we can select a number of intellectual outputs which may be covered off by this particular multiplier event, and we'll give it a date, add in the details of the organisation, details of the number of participants, local and international, and it's calculating that figure for us. If we save that, there we are, see, it's very clever, showing us that we've actually asking for too much. That's what comes from random numbers in. Just well, there we are. It's because we've got the maximum number of multiplier events for this particular project, so we'll cancel that. But hopefully, you're getting the idea there. Okay, so now if we move on from multiplier events, we can go on to learning, teaching and training activities. That's international learning, teaching and training activities. And again, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of familiarity here. And not all projects will have grant agreed for learning, teaching and training activities. But if your project does, this is the screen that you would be using, section of the Mobility Tool Plus that you'll be using. And again, you might find that this search facility is particularly helpful here, just to focus down on what might be long-term activities. And there we are. Or focusing perhaps on short-term activities. There we are there. Or if we want to view all those activities. And again, quite a bit of information actually on this particular screen. Giving us details of the numbers of participants, grant for each of those particular activities. I know we've got some totals also at the bottom. But still very familiar in terms of how you look at information and how it's updated, and you've got these buttons here on the right-hand side of the screen. So if we were just to view this particular activity, we can have a little bit more information about it. And also we have as well now details of the participants. Okay, and so it just happens that there's only one participant so far for this particular meeting on our example here. Go back to our list. If we were to click on an edit, we can edit the description, say, for argument's sake. And you'll see here also, and it often happens actually within Mobility Tool Plus, it's going to give you the character available, the number of characters to the left. Again, we've just got the one participant. We can edit the information for that participant here, where you see that edit button, or we can create. We need to save that because we have changed information. Without saving it, it was asking us if we wanted to proceed without changing or saving those changes. We hit the create button there, so I'm going to add in another participant. We're just entering the information into the field as it's requiring us to do so. And we can see here, we can add in if the person is an accompanying person, someone with special needs, someone with fewer opportunities. And interestingly enough, also we've got the option here to add in if it's non-EU funded, so somebody who's going along to mobility, but actually not a mobility to be funded by the project. And by clicking that, it will just mean that the amounts calculated will be overridden, and you will have a zero grant amount for this particular mobility. Okay, so adding some information, sending organisation, receiving organisation, distance band. Now, there's an interesting point here. If a different place of departure or arrival is reported, please provide the reason for this difference. So again, important box there to add in extra information. And having entered in the dates and the distance band, it's calculating an amount of grant. Again, we've got more opportunity to give more comments if needs be. Now, if we were to say this is a non-EU funded mobility, you'll see there that the amounts have now disappeared. Okay. Just take that off. And if we hopefully the figures have come back in, and we can now save. So, okay, so we're saving this particular area on. It's coming up saying data saved successfully. Okay, and it's taken us back to the previous screen, and there we are. We've got our additional person in there as well. Okay, and we can go back to our main list. Okay, and actually, Shantae's just had a request from somebody for us to just have a better view, really, at the ribbons at the top of the screen. So there are quite a few sections here. And you'll see we've been going through one at a time. You don't need to do that, obviously. You can click around the various sections or here. So if we wanted to, even though we're in learning, teaching and training activities at the moment, we can move back to the details screen. Okay, and this was our initial screen that we started off at. And contacts, we can click on contacts there, and again there's our list of contacts where we can add in additional contacts if we wish to do so. If I said to you earlier about perhaps having somebody with administrative responsibilities in your organisation who you may wish to actually do the inputting, and you may wish to give that person access rights to the project to input information. But all the various sections that we're looking at, they start off by clicking on one of these two ribbon bands here. So there we have the learning, teaching and training activities again. That's the one that we were just looking at. Hopefully you found that fairly self-explanatory. Some of this, I mean, obviously for some of the activities you might find you have quite a few participants, and you may need to spend some time to get this information right and to enter it in. I guess the benefit of all this is that, generally speaking, it will calculate the grant amount for you. Okay, so if I now move on to the next screen, which is special needs support. Now, if you have applied for special needs support, you'll need to complete this section of the Mobility Toolbus. Now, if you just scroll down. Now, to add in an additional budget or entry to this, you'll need to use the Create button. You'll see actually we've got one entry already. Descriptions test, and it's got a total amount here of €2,000. And again, familiar in terms of those adding in extra columns, removing extra columns, exporting the information, selecting particular records, viewing, editing or deleting an item. If we were to view that particular item there, this, unlike a lot of the other sections, is quite limited in the amount of information you need to give, but the organisation to which the special needs support refers to, the number of participants with special needs, the cost, and the description there is what you would be putting in, explaining about the costs here, and giving some explanation around that. And if we want to create, we can do so. And of course, we'd have to enter in a figure here as well, and a description. We'll be able to save that. Okay, but we'll just delete a particular item. There we are. Just so I can show you again really how you delete in Mobility Tool Plus. Okay, and let's now move on to exceptional costs. Now again, exceptional costs, it may not necessarily apply to your particular project, but if exceptional costs have been approved, this is where you would be putting information into Mobility Tool Plus. And I guess the thing here is to be aware that you are obviously reporting the full real cost, as indicated by this column here. Funding is for 75%, so this is why you've got this additional column there. This is the full amount, this is the actual amount being claimed. And again, it's showing an adjusted. Generally, when you have an adjusted column, it's because you can override figures for whatever reason. So, okay, so if we were to just look at one of those, okay, and you'll see here again, very familiar, the full cost calculated 75% and the total adjusted. Okay. So there we are. So if we close that screen down, again, edit if we wanted to do so. I'll increase that full cost, and again, just clicking away, it's automatically calculated 75%. And we have a trusty green create button there if we wish to add in another item. There we are, so it's calculated the eligible cost, and we can explain to the national agency exactly what that description is for that particular cost item, and we can save that again. Okay. Now, you'll see here a tab. The next tab is Exceptional Cost Guarantee. Now, I clicked on it, but just to make you aware that this cost was introduced by the European Commission only from the 2015 call as an additional expenditure which can be claimed by projects under the Exceptional Cost Budget heading, and it's not applicable to projects under the 2014 call, and so no entry is expected for any of your projects. So it's sitting there, but there should be nothing added into that particular section for any of your projects. Okay, so finally we're going to go to the budget screen. Now, this screen provides you with an overall summary, financial summary of all the various sections that you've added into your Mobility Tool Plus. We would recommend that you review this particular screen. I mean, not only will it help you see whether or not what you've entered into any of the particular sections is right, because you'll soon see if the figures that you're expecting are there. It also allows you to kind of monitor your project against the grant which you've been awarded, and to make sure that you are keeping on track. Now, this particular project is a test project, so they're probably not useful figures. You'll see, however, the layout, which is consistent, and you'll see on the left-hand side of your screen the different sections of funding. Okay. And you'll see here a column, approved budget by the national agency. Probably best to highlight actually the fact that a lot of this information here you'll see is greyed out, and in fact you can't adjust the information which is greyed out. If you were wanting to adjust the budget within Mobility Tool, you'll actually be going back into the appropriate section to do so. But here I've got the column approved budget by national agency. Now this will be pre-populated. So when you go into Mobility Tool for the first time, I recommend that you actually go and have a look at the budget screen, check to make sure that it's showing the grant amount which you're expecting to see. That grant amount will be the grant amount which is in your grant agreement. And so we have this column here where the figures are showing. Now, you'll see also for this particular project, funds weren't approved for a number of items, so that's why it's showing up as 0. Now in the middle here, this is designed to really help you understand the budget transfers which are allowed by the grant agreement and the parameters of those. You may find that for most projects I would argue that probably that information isn't going to be particularly helpful, because you'll not necessarily be wanting to transfer from one budget section to another. Your grant allows you to do that, and I would urge you to look at the grant agreement for details of that. But here we have columns of minimum allowed and maximum allowed transfers. And here, this column here, we've got current budget in Mobility Tool. So what this is doing is it's actually calculating or pulling together all those individual sections, and it's bringing it into this particular column. Probably one of the things to notice is the top figure. It's highlighted in red, and I think it's doing so because it's considerably higher than what the grant amount is. In fact, if you look at the column on the far right, percentage of current or approved budget, it's showing that it's 369% of the approved budget. So obviously we've overspent with this particular test budget, but you can see there that the idea is it helps you see how you're doing. Now, this is the figure here, which is calculated. Now the box above, if it's different, it will be because it's been adjusted in some way. So you'll see calculated is, I've reversed it around here a little bit. We've calculated, and the figure there is the actual amount which is showing. And I think for at least one of those entries we made, we overrode a figure. So I think this is why we might see occasionally, certainly for that, the two amounts are slightly different. Okay, but we've got exceptional costs here at the bottom, where we can actually enter in exceptional costs. We can override that figure here, I think. No, it's not allowing me to do so, but it is allowing me to give some information about that exceptional cost. Okay. I'm just hearing from Shantae that the sound's coming and going a little bit. I'll try and talk a little bit louder just to make sure that if there is anything that you feel that you're not quite caught up, you've not heard me yet say, or there's an area that you would like us to go back through, just let Shantae know, and she can tell me, and we can easily go back to a particular section. Here we have this exceptional costs field, where again we were able to explain the budget that we're requesting to the national agency. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to the final tab, which relates to reports. Okay, so this actually is where you will be creating your final beneficiary report at the end of your project. Now, I would just say that you will be given additional guidance from the national agency nearer to the time of when your project is actually due to end. This is kind of giving you a bit of an overview of what the Mobility Tool Plus looks like in terms of the final report. It's also quite interesting, and you'll see actually here in our test example that we've already created a draft report. In fact, if you were to come to this new, you would see a slightly different view, and you would have a button here which would say to create the final report. We actually, as it's already been created, you'll see a draft available. It's telling us there's 97% of that report's already been completed. The button that we've got available to ourselves is to edit. And you'll see along the top here, we're at draft stage at the moment, but we can, if we were to submit, you'll see it would go into submission in progress stage here. Once fully submitted, and we see by the national agency, it would show you here, show that it's submitted. And during the assessment stage, you'll find that the project is validated, the information is validated within Mobility Tool Plus for your particular project by the national agency, and you'll see that the button there will change to NA validated. If there were any queries around the information in Mobility Tool, the national agency has an opportunity there to ask you about those points. And then once everything's finalised and your project's been assessed, you have the project there will be, the state will be changed to finalised. Also, just to make you aware, there's a kind of a history really here of changes that are made, which you may find it quite helpful to be aware of when things are being done. Now, if we were to click on Edit Draft, there we are. So now we've gone into the final report itself, and it all works to pull through information. So a lot of information already, when you go into your final report form for the first time, a lot of information will already be pre-populated. Most of the, I'd say all of the statistics, the actual financial data, that will be there, and you'll also find some basic information about your project, which is there as well. Now, scroll down. Allow me to do that. I'll just show you actually how we are able to see the different sections. We'll see actually, it's not particularly helpful at the moment, but you'll see here that the percentage of the report that's been completed, and you'll actually see sections of the report. As you click down those sections, it will take you in the report form to the various sections, and you'll see on the right hand side of your screen that kind of whizzing through a little bit. What's not so helpful is the fact that for some reason the screen that I'm looking at through my web browser, I suspect it's because of how we're using this in our webinar today. It's not actually showing you all parts of the panel to the left-hand side. You won't experience or shouldn't experience that particular problem. I suspect that's really due to the fact that we're doing it in a particular way for the purpose of this webinar. But you're at least getting an idea of what the report form looks like. So as we scroll down, a lot of this information will be added in. Project summary here. Important to make sure that that's clear, because that will be used in the Erasmus Plus Projects Dissemination Platform as a description for your project. Here we are, summary of participating organisations, description of the project. Here's some questions that you'd be entering in about your project, giving details of what's taking place, etc. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time really on that. As I said to you before, you'll get further information from the national agency nearer to the time of your final report is actually due, and it will explain more about the information, the level of detail that you need to provide in your final report form. Okay, but that is our final screen there. Now, here's your opportunity if anybody wants to ask Shante to get me to look through any of those screens again. I'm happy to do so before we move back to our presentation. But just to summarise really a little bit on some of the points that we've had, it is very important actually to make sure that you complete all the budget headings in Mobility Tool Plus which were approved for your project, and to make sure that the information entered is correct. Now, if you enter in higher amounts than those which were approved within your original application, the warning will pop out on the bottom of the column where higher amounts were entered, and you won't be able to save any data. Now, you can also save the created record if all the required fields are completed. If not, you won't be able to do so. If there is an error within your grant approved, please contact your project officer as soon as possible. And also, the final report form, it does not have to be completed within one session. The data is saved automatically, and you can go back into it over various occasions to continue to complete the form before you hit the submit button. And just to confirm that the report is generated directly in Mobility Tool, and that you won't have to download the form onto your computer. So a very good question somebody's actually raised, and I'm not too sure who has asked the question, but they've asked a very good question about interim reports. At the present moment in time, there is no functionality for interim reports within Mobility Tool Plus. In fact, we haven't actually been given a timeline from the Commission yet as to when that's likely to be the case. And so when it does come to complete an interim report for your particular project, you will be sent a form as a document, a Word document, and you'll be asked to submit that by email to the national agency. So what we've just looked at actually is reports, and specifically reports, final reports for projects. So interim or progress reports, they'll continue to be submitted using good old-fashioned technology and using a pro forma, which the national agency will send to you when those reports are due. So yes, so thank you to whomever asked that particular question. Okay, so if there are no other requests to have a look at any specific screen again, just click back to the details screen. Then I'm going to just go back to our presentation where we've got just a few more slides available. And we'll then just wrap up the webinar as well. Okay, so I don't think there's a request to go back into any of those screens. I'm just looking over Shantae's shoulder just to see if we've got any requests here. Okay, that's lovely. So, okay, I won't quiet on you, don't worry. We're just trying to get back to the presentation screen at the moment. So if you just bear with me, I'm just going to switch off my microphone at the moment and I'll get back to you very soon. Okay, so sorry about that. We've got a little while just to get to the right presentation and right slides in that presentation, but okay, so some key points here. Now, while you work on the Mobility Tool Plus platform, please refer to the National Agency's Guide as a guide document for yourself. And as I mentioned to you earlier, you should all have now received that via email from your project officer. But you can also supplement this with guidance provided by the European Commission, and that document was on the mobility tool itself, and I highlighted earlier where you could click on that particular guide, and that's really on your landing page when you log in via ECAS. Now we're going to ask that you periodically update the Mobility Tool Plus platform, as this is a contractual requirement which must be met by all beneficiaries and is pivotal to completing the final report. Please save any details you input frequently so as not to lose any information. You'll actually find as you're going through Mobility Tool Plus that a lot of it is saved automatically. If you are entering in information, don't forget you have that save button to hit on save. Now, ensure information on the Mobility Tool Plus reflects information on your grant, and if this is not the case, please contact the national agency. And can you please double check that the figures input, figures which are input, are showing the right amount and are also within the maximum amount allowed for under the budget headings in your grant agreement. Obviously, if you've got any discrepancies when you go in, I think really the key thing here is to get in contact with the your project officer and to make them aware of those discrepancies. And on that particular note, actually, if you are struggling or unclear about anything, and the guidance document isn't able to answer your particular question, then please contact the national agency through your project officer, or if not, through the Erasmus Plus helpline. Okay, so moving on to next steps and contact details. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, actually, you should expect an email informing you when you will have access to Mobility Tool Plus, and you'll be receiving that in the before the end of this week. Basically, the email will be an automated email, so it might actually come into either your inbox or a spam folder, so just bear that in mind. In there, it will give you a link through to Mobility Tool Plus, and also instructions on the importance of registering via ECAS. Now, you're going to be receiving a recording of this particular webinar, and this will be made available to you in due course, and we'll let you know once it's ready. And I mentioned to you earlier that if your project officer is not available to answer your specific questions about Mobility Tool Plus, you can actually answer or contact the helpline, where our team will endeavour to help you as best they can. And there we have, in fact, the contact details for the helpline. So it leaves me really just to say thank you for all your attention and participation, all the questions you've asked. Now we're going to be around for a few more minutes to answer any final questions, and if anything you have still that you want to ask us, this is kind of your opportunity to do so. But afterwards, if there are still pressing questions that you have got and didn't feel that you had the opportunity in the webinar to ask, please contact your project officer or the Erasmus Plus course.com email address on the screen. Now, if there are any questions that we've not actually managed to answer during this particular session, because of too many questions coming at us and we've not been able to do that, then we will be able to get back to you afterwards by email. Now, I hope you found the session useful today, and that it will help you in using Mobility Tool Plus, which I think I'm hopeful that we'll have shown that actually is a fairly straightforward tool to actually use. I will say goodbye at this particular stage, and we'll be staying around just a bit longer, as I just mentioned. But thank you again for taking part in today's webinar. Thank you.